দেখা যাচ্ছে?
জি ম্যাম।
First question.
Yes, ma'am.
How is the theme pride connected to Mr. Darcy? এটা কিভাবে এটা আমরা বিভিন্নভাবে বলতে পারি. We know that the word pride is one theme in the title of the very famous novel, namely Pride and Prejudice. Pride means what? Pride means হচ্ছে blue blood tendency. অনেক কিছু বলা যায়, অহংকার, অহংবোধের কয়েকটা synonymous word তোমরা বলতে পারো. And first তোমরা pride এর definitionটা দিবা. What is pride? Pride বলতে কি কি বোঝায়? It is an adjective. It means haughtiness. It means arrogance. It means having a tendency who is boast of his wealth. হ্যাঁ, যে অহংকার করে. And Mr. Darcy is the central character and the hero of the novel. Okay, and from the very beginning, whenever we first, as an audience or as a reader, when we first meet Mr. Darcy, we see that Mr. Darcy appears for the first time in the novel as a very haughty, arrogant, proud, young gentleman, and he is very proud because of his own wealth, of his own social status. He is very conscious of his social status because he belongs to a very, very, very rich family. So this is how the theme pride is connected to Mr. Darcy. With whom the theme prejudice is connected in the novel? Prejudice is another important theme of the novel, namely Pride and Prejudice, written by Jane Austen. Prejudice means negative feelings or misunderstood feelings about some person. Prejudice, কুসংস্কারের জন্য যেটাকে আমরা negatively consider করা হয়. And the very thing, prejudice, is connected to the heroine, namely Elizabeth Bennet in the novel. তো কিভাবে connected? একই connection, একই incident. From the very beginning, when the hero and the heroine confront each other for the first time at the ball dance party organized by Mr. Bingley, Elizabeth offers a proposal, or offers Mr. Darcy to become her dance partner, but very haughtily but very arrogantly, Mr. Darcy refused Elizabeth to do so. And from that incident onwards, Elizabeth starts to cherish, or Elizabeth starts to nurture a kind of prejudiced feeling against Mr. Darcy, that he is not at all a friendly person. He is not at all a social person. He is a rather haughty person. He doesn't want to evaluate each person irrespective of caste and class. He is very conscious of his social status. On the contrary, after all, he is not at all a sociable person, a friendly person. So this is the prejudiced feeling of Elizabeth Bennet towards Mr. Darcy, against Mr. Darcy. Acha. Number 3, who is the comedy character in the novel? Throughout the entire novel, there is only one comedy character, and his name is Mr. Collins. Mr. Collins. In relation, he is a distant relative to Mr. Bennet. He is a distant cousin to Mr. Bennet, and he is a pompous fool by profession. He is a clergyman who has been inherited some property by his patroness, namely Lady Catherine de Bourgh. Okay, and he tends to shows more that he doesn't have actually. তার বেশি নাই, but সে বেশি দেখাতে পছন্দ করে. That's why he is a pompous fool, and his activity is almost like a clownish activity. Clownরা জোকাররা যেমন কাজ করে সে তেমন কাজ করে, নিজেকে খুব বেশি মনে করে, যত বড় অবস্থান না তার থেকে বেশি সে দেখায়. So he is the comedy. This is how he is the only comedy character in the novel. Number 4, how many members are there in the Bennet family? এই কোয়েশ্চেনটা অনেক ইজি হয়ে গেছে, তো আনসার শুধু এক লাইনে দিলে হবে না. There are 5 members. Sorry, there are 7 members in total in the Bennet family. Who are they? Mr. Bennet, the father and head of the Bennet family, Mrs. Bennet, the mother of the Bennett family and wife of Mr. Bennett. তারপরে 5 বোনের নাম তোমরা সিরিয়ালি বলবে এবং কে কত নাম্বার সেটা সহ বলবে। তোমরা এখন যদি ডিরেক্টলি একটা কোয়েশ্চেন বলো there are total 7 members in Bennett family তাহলে তো এটা 10 এর আনসার হলো না, ঠিক আছে? তারপর জেইন ব্যানেট the first daughter অথবা eldest daughter of the Bennett family, Elizabeth Bennett, third, fourth, fifth, পুরো নাম প্রনাউন্সিয়েশন সহ সুন্দর করে বলতে হবে। Number 5, who is the main villain in the novel? We know that there are 3 villainous characters in total in the novel, but main villain হচ্ছে Mr. Wickham, তার সম্পর্কে বলবে। Mr. Wickham is the main villain in the novel. He is by profession a military officer. He is a very handsome young man. Any girl at her first sight must be fallen in love with him. He is such a kind of, he possesses, or he has such kind of attractive physical appearance, but inwardly he has a very evil or wicked mind. He always tends to harm girls. He always wants to play with the emotion of the young girls. And he throughout the entire novel he performs many villainous activities. At first with Mr. Darcy's darling sister Georgiana Darcy, and later Elizabeth's younger sister Lydia Darcy. Okay, এইভাবে কয়েকটা villainous activity নাম মেনশন করলেই হবে। আচ্ছা, 6 number, can you mention the name of other villainous characters in the novel? Yes, I can mention. দেখো কোয়েশ্চেনটা একটু অন্যভাবে আমি সাজিয়েছি, can you mention, তাহলে হবে yes, I can mention the names of other villainous characters in the novel. They are Miss Bingley, younger sister of Mr. Bingley, and Lady Catherine the Boar, who is the patroness of Mr. Collins, and most importantly Mr. Darcy's aunt. এতটুকু বললে হবে না, কেন তারা villain, কি কি villainous activity তারা করেছে এটাও তোমাদের মেনশন করতে হবে। যেমন মিস বিংলি, as soon as she comes to know that Mr. Darcy starts liking Elizabeth to a little extent, he feels jealous of her. He does not want to see Elizabeth's face, and he leaves no stone unturned to separate Elizabeth from Mr. Darcy, because since his childhood she loves Mr. Darcy. Eta acha tarpor Lady Catherine the Boar, she is Mr. Darcy's aunt, and she has her own desire to marry her daughter with Mr. Darcy, with her nephew Mr. Darcy. So in order to materialize his purpose, towards the end of the novel, suddenly one night he visited the Bennet family to warn Elizabeth that she should not marry Mr. Darcy. Okay, so this is how these 2 villainous characters have performed their villainous activity throughout the entire novel. Number 7, why did Mr. Darcy reject Elizabeth Bennet to become his dance partner at the ball dance party? এটার কিছুটা আনসার, এটার আনসারের অনেকটা আমি কিন্তু 1 নাম্বার কোয়েশ্চেনের আনসারে বলে ফেলেছি, ঠিক আছে? কিন্তু এখানে তোমরা কোয়েশ্চেন অনুযায়ী ওই একই কথা বলবা, বাট এটা হবে তোমাদের কোয়েশ্চেন অনুযায়ী। মিস্টার ডার্সি রিজেক্টেড, যেহেতু ডিড আছে কোয়েশ্চেনের মধ্যে, মিস্টার ডার্সি rejected Elizabeth Bennet to become his dance partner at the ball dance party because of social class difference. Mr. Darcy is a very, very rich man. On the contrary, Elizabeth belongs to upper middle class girl. So Mr. Darcy thinks that Elizabeth cannot be a perfect match to become his dance partner. So Mr. Darcy should dance with such kind of girl who belongs to his same social class. So thinking that, and it shows Mr. Darcy's arrogance and haughty nature. Okay, so this is why Mr. Darcy rejected Elizabeth Bennet to become his dance partner at the ball dance party. Number 8, how did Mr. Bingley feel to see Jane at first sight? প্রথমবার মিস্টার বিংলির কি অনুভূতি হয়েছিল জেনকে দেখে? Mr. Bingley for the first time saw Jane at the ball dance party that he himself has arranged. Actually, it was love at first sight between Jane Bennet and Mr. Bingley. To see Jane at first sight, Mr. Bingley feels a kind of attractiveness or a kind of loving attitude towards Jane, and he starts falling in love with Jane to see Jane at first sight. This is called love at first sight, and there was no hypocrisy and there was no negativity. It was an sincere feeling of love. এটাতে কোনো ভেজাল ছিল না on the side of Mr. Bingley. এটা একটা নির্ভেজাল ছিল, পবিত্র ভালোবাসা ছিল, ডার্সির মতো না। Okay, number 9. Why did Charlotte agree to marry Mr. Collins? Students, এটা লিখে নেবে, এটা খুব বেশি ইম্পর্টেন্ট। Charlotte কেন Mr. Collins কে বিয়ে করতে রাজি হয়েছিল? Charlotte agreed to marry Mr. Collins for certain reasons. Firstly, কিছু জিনিস শার্লটের কাছে ম্যাটার করে। Marriage doesn't mean the loving relationship between husband and wife that 90% girls think, তাই না? আমরা কি মনে করি ম্যারেজ অবশ্যই হাজবেন্ডটা ভালো হতে হবে, তার ক্যারেক্টারটা ভালো হতে হবে, আর আমরা একটু চেহারা সুন্দর অনেকে মেয়েরা খুঁজি, বাট শার্লটের কাছে এগুলো ম্যাটার করে না। What matters to her?
ভালো জীবন যাপন করতে পারে এরকম কিছু।
Yes, security, financial stability, security, a sweet home, a sweet family. যে চারটা বললাম, security, financial stability, a sweet family, a sweet home. So she doesn't consider her life partner to be much attractive, much handsome, almost of her same age. Rather, she is ready to get married such kind of person who is much older than her. তার কাছে বয়সে বড় অসুবিধা নাই, ক্লাউনও অসুবিধা নাই, তার কাছে কোনো হ্যান্ডসামনেস এর দরকার নাই। At least she is getting an honest husband, এটাই তার কাছে ম্যাটার করে। সে তো একটা ঘর পাচ্ছে। By marrying Mr. Collins, she is securing a sweet home, a sweet family, an honest husband, and it matters to her because কারণটা অবশ্যই বলতে হবে, she belongs to a very very poor family. তো তার কাছে এত অন্য কিছু চিন্তা করার টাইম নেই, ঠিক আছে? এই কারণে this is why Charlotte agreed to marry Mr. Collins. Number 10. Why did Mr. Collins visit to the Bennet family? Mr. Collins visited to the Bennet family for two reasons. Firstly, it was a law at that time. Rich man অথবা an upper middle class person who doesn't have any son, rather who has daughters, his property will automatically be inherited to his distant male heir. এটা একটা সিস্টেম ছিল। So accordingly, Mr. Collins is a distant relative to Mr. Bennet. So the first reason why Mr. Collins visited Mr. Bennet is that to inherit Mr. Bennet's property according to the law of the time, and secondly to find out a suitable bride for him among Mr. Bennet's 5 daughters. ঠিক আছে, এটা এভাবে বললেই হবে। Number 11. What is the dark past of George Wickham that is related to Darcy's family? George Wickham has a dark past related to Darcy's family. It was that George Wickham was an orphan. He has been adopted by Mr. Darcy's father, and from childhood he was not at all a good boy. Rather, he grew up as a greedy person, and he tends to harm girls. So in order to materialize his devilish intention, he tries to elope with Georgiana Darcy, Mr. Darcy's adorable younger sister, but he could not fulfill it because Mr. Darcy was already because Mr. Darcy sensed Mr. Wickham's evil intention and he protected his younger sister to do so. So this is the dark past of George Wickham that is related to Darcy's family. 12. How did Lydia B bring disgrace to the Bennet family? Question did ache, answer brought হয়ে যাবে. Lydia is the most pampered daughter, or Lydia is the most pampered child of the entire Bennet household. So she is the little, she is the youngest daughter of the Bennet family, and we know that she is a man crazy girl. So when she sees George Wickham, she starts falling in love with him, and she at certain stage she elopes with Mr. Wickham without knowing her own family, and we know that it is a crime or it is a sin. It is a sin to elope with some man without being married. So by eloping with George Wickham, Lydia brought disgrace to the Bennet family. Okay, এটা গেল তোমার 12 number. 13. Why did George Wickham finally agree to marry Lydia? George Wickham finally agreed to marry Lydia because he demanded a handsome amount of dowry from the Bennet family, and finally he got that type of that amount of dowry from Bennet family, and we know that Mr. Darcy provided that very handsome amount of money to Mr. Wickham. So as he got his desired amount, he is ready or he is willing to marry Lydia Bennet. 14. How is Mr. Darcy responsible for breaking Jane Bingley pre-wedding relationship? Students একটু খেয়াল করেন, pre-wedding বলা হয়েছে, wedding বলা হয় না, pre মানে বিয়ের আগের। আচ্ছা, Mr. Darcy is responsible for breaking Jane Bingley pre-wedding relationship in a particular way. What was that way? Whenever the marriage was almost arranged, suddenly Mr. Bingley left a Longbourn village and started for London without letting Jane know. And this was a bolt from the blue for the entire Bennet family. And Jane has been completely broken down, thinking that whether Mr. Bingley will marry him or not. Okay. Finally, Elizabeth came to know that Mr. Darcy was responsible for breaking Jane Bingley pre-wedding relationship because Mr. Darcy himself confessed that Mr. Darcy did not find such kind of sincerity or such kind of seriousness in the love affair of Jane Bennet, that he has found the same kind of sincerity and honesty in his own best friend, Mr. Bingley. So thinking that Mr. Darcy advised his best friend, Mr. Bingley, to keep distance from Jane. So this is how Mr. Darcy is responsible for breaking Jane Bingley pre-wedding relationship. Last question. What were the confessions that Mr. Darcy had clarified in the confession letter to Elizabeth? তোমরা একটু বলো কয়টা কনফেশন ছিল? যারা আনমিউট করে আছো তারা বলো।
তিনটা ম্যাম, তিনটা।
What were that? কি কি ছিল? প্রথমত ফার্স্ট এটা বলতে হবে there were 3 confessions in total that Mr. Darcy had clarified in the confession letter to Elizabeth. First one, why he didn't why he refused Elizabeth to become her dance partner, এটা বলে দিবে, because his obnoxious attitude, because of his arrogant attitude, but it was completely Mr. Darcy's mistake. Gradually, he realized that he had mistaken to do so. এটা একটা গেল। Secondly, কি ছিল? Regarding Lydia Wickham. Lydia Wickham এর জন্য বলে দিবে যে Wickham is actually a evil person. Wickham is a very bad person. Elizabeth thinks that he is good person, that he is not at all, because Mr. Darcy knows Wickham since his childhood. তারপরে বলবে কিভাবে তার বোনকে নিয়ে পালানোর প্ল্যান করেছিল, কিভাবে প্রপার্টি মানে দখল করতে চেয়েছিল। এটা গেল সেকেন্ড কনফেশন। থার্ড কনফেশনটা কি ছিল? What was the third confession?
ম্যাম যৌতুকের টাকাটা দিয়েছিল এটা
না,
কি?
এটা কোনো কনফেশন না। থার্ড
Miss-
কনফেশন যেটা একটু আগে আমি বললাম,
জেনকে ব্রিংলির সাথে
জেন বিংলির সাথে ডিস্টেন্স করার কারণ, এটা আমি একটু আগের আনসারে বলে দিয়েছি, তো এটা অল্প করে এখানে তুলতে হবে। প্রথমে নাম্বারটা বলবে 3 কনফেশন, তারপর ইন শর্ট, এত বড় বড় করে বলার দরকার নাই, ইন শর্ট 3টে কনফেশন সিরিয়ালি বলবে। ঠিক আছে? সো দ্যাটস অল অ্যাবাউট টুডেজ ক্লাস, টুডেজ লেকচার।